They have basically put two of the most beautiful architectural drawings inside what is arguably one of the most frustrating to look at CGI images I've seen yet. Not even sure what's going on in here. '81. The museum's design seamlessly integrates with the surrounding site. No, it doesn't. It doesn't? How does this seamlessly integrate with the surrounding site? It just doesn't. From the off, it's a bit funky. I'm looking at it, it looks like we sort of had like a sphere, and then they've taken like one quadrant of the sphere and they've broken it, and then they've added these splicey screens around it, wrapped around a quarter of it, and then they've sort of made the facade or the outer part of this broken sphere like this walkable surface. But if I just look at it here now, it doesn't look very walkable. Like, that looks incredibly steep. For example, if you just look at the trajectory of this curve, the angle of it, these people would have to basically walk up something that is almost as steep as the straight facade here, but then twice as high. Like, you would be absolutely knackered climbing this. You'd be exhausted. And then what do you get at the end of this climb? You get to go inside a greenhouse, I guess, that has no visible view to the park in behind. So I suppose you'd have to come up, climb this, and then turn around. Like, I wouldn't want to climb down it. I don't like heights, and this is just me. It just looks a bit excessive. So let's see what else they have to say. By blending into the piazza, I don't think it blends. The building fosters a strong connection between the indoor exhibits and the outdoor environment. Okay, let's go to the next image. Really nice images here. The remains of the wreck wash ashore and remain abandoned for years. So these diagrams actually explain the sort of massing now. So I'm way more interested in this now, looking at these kind of images, which are great, by the way. So sometimes this comes down to, there is a concept, and then the concept can be sort of explained and justified in a really interesting way. So that's like, yeah, well done for that. But then it doesn't mean I still like the concept, you know? So for example, this is an example of a page that explains the breakdown of its concept quite well. It's very strong. The metaphors, the references, the style of the images, all very good. But if you showed me this first, and I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. Oh, but then that's what we get. I'm just personally like a little bit disappointed by it. I think these images are really dramatic and exciting, and then this building is a bit less so, in my opinion. So let's go to image 3. I mean, yeah, like, it just doesn't, I don't get excited by looking at it, and maybe that says more about my own kind of physical fitness right now. I don't fancy really going up those stairs. Yes, there's a conversation to be had about accessibility, but I think we're all having those conversations now in the comments section, so I'm aware, same criticism applies, but I'm going to save that for the comments again. For example, if I'm in a wheelchair, I can't even get up to the piazza based on this image. Like, but anyway, again, we're all aware of it. We all know about it. We can leave it for the comments. This image is quite nice. It's a little bit reminiscent of the Bjork Ingalls project in Manhattan. I think it's in Manhattan. The what do they call it? You know, the triangular looking thing. It's kind of cool. No, overall, not a fan of this one. Image 4, nice interior. Doesn't tell me too much, really. Again, it's a lobby. We've been through this conversation before. We know why the lobby images are being used. Nice view, for sure. I really like this view here, out into the harbour. Image 5, references, yeah. You almost sort of don't need these references when you've got a page like this. But anyway, I'm going to move on. I think the idea is awesome. It's cool. It's exciting. I think the execution, the translation of the idea into some type of architecture is less successful. Um, don't love it overall, but it's interesting. So I suppose there's some good work here in that sense. Going to move on to the next one. 82. Ooba Baluba. Ooba Baluba. Ooba Baluba. I do not know what that word means. AD. I have noticed that a lot of the entries use the graphic house style on a lot of the entries, which is cool. Okay, see a bit of a big defensive, triangular, chunky looking boy here with some curvy edges, which is kind of cool. There's some little bits here. It's nice. I'm assuming that this is the leftover run. It's really nice seeing. I think I said this in like my very first video actually. My very first review in this series. It's nice to see architects actually show what will actually be going onto the roof. For example, if the building has a lift, then there will be a lift overrun. Now, sometimes that can be incorporated into the overall mass and volume of the building. It's just nice to see. Now, I'm just assuming that this is the lift overrun. I could be wrong. Little tight slice opening here going on. Horizontal fenestration. Very, very, I think it's a little bit gloomy. Let's see, next image. Wow. Whoa. It's a kind of cool diagram. Bit of a technical page, really. It's a bit dull to look at. Diagrams are a bit harsh. Modern building, sober but contemporary architectural language. Sober but contemporary. The image isn't giving me an awful lot here. I'm trying to see where we would be looking at this from. Staircase looks incredibly unresolved. It's literally floating. Not a great image. Not quite sure how this cladding works. The way that this sort of facet meets this one looks very uncomfortable and untidy. Looks very dull. Don't love it overall. Sections are interesting though for sure. Image 3. I mean, again, this could be a good project. I think some of the very early reviews in this series touched on a similar issue. I can't quite tell if it's a good project or not, in that the image isn't really selling it to me. For example, like the distance between this viewpoint and then the building itself is so vast and empty. And I appreciate, yeah, we've got like, some people here and some people there, but there's this idea that you have to think about how scale in such an open urban space can really affect you mentally. For example, if we look at this image, it's quite psychologically intense to approach such a tall building so far away within such an open space. Like it can really feel like quite a distance. So maybe it's a question of either where the view here is taken from or the way in which that entrance, sort of plaza, plinth is calibrated to be a bit more welcoming. But you can imagine this being quite windy and intense from, on a day-to-day basis. And you really have to be justifying. You really have to justify what it is that someone would be walking towards. Maybe I'm being really silly and all of these projects have to deal with the same thing. But for example, here, I'm assuming that view's been taken from like here. And this looks much nicer. For example, there's this much, I think this is what it is. The problem's the image. Although there are people in it, there's a real lack of human scale. And if we look back here, we can see things such as there are more trees. There's like a little bit of a sort of garden out here. There's some like umbrellas and outdoor seating. It looks much nicer here. Here it just looks a bit empty. But oh well, I'm not going to get caught up on it too much longer. Really intense interior, not sure how all this works. There is something, again, psychologically threatening maybe by the sort of the verticality of these elements in this screen. It reminds me a little bit of sort of like a jail cell, sort of. I don't know. Cool, clever though that they've used their floor plan in the map here. I actually really like that. That's quite a nice touch. So well done. That's cool. Big, huge Grimaldi ferry cruising off in the distance. It's fine, I guess it's fine. Technically, it's not very well resolved. There's a big idea I think it could have done with a bit more work. Alto Vase. We should start another series where we just collate everything, every project together that references that. Is it a vase? It is a vase, isn't it? Anyway. Okay, don't love it. Gonna move on to the next one. 83. This one looks interesting. This one looks a bit like a cake. It looks like 3 cakes made out of like translucent icing. I don't know, it's a bit cool. Let's see a little bit more. Definitely intrigued. Image 2. Oh wow, beautiful model. Beautiful section diagram. I know that a lot of the other entries have these, apparently have them somewhere in their other pages that are not available in the online gallery. Oh, it's so nice to just see a diagram like this finally. Very clean, very clear. Just, the whole project is diagrammed for me very nicely. So we have event, we have gallery, workshop gallery, central atrium entry. So you come in under a gallery, that's a really nice move. Support in the back, very nice. And then the spaces sort of just stack. This model is incredible, beautiful model. This diagram is a little bit more confusing, visual connectivity diagram. Design is a thread woven through the very heart of Finnish culture. Yeah. Image 3. I think this and this big time sell the project. This, don't know. This, not so much. Looks a little bit like a medieval castle in some type of like high fantasy setting. I don't dislike it. It's not very, I think because all of the volumes are made of this sort of translucent external cladding, that it makes it quite difficult to actually read the volumes in a way that you can sort of read the section, and in a way you can sort of read the project a little bit here as well. 4. Interior. Very, very bright, very saturated. Interesting though, this very strong timber interior, this very interesting interior. I like the sort of, looks to be softness. Are these like curtains, or is this fabric, or is it glass? If it's glass, I'm a little bit less interested. Yeah, it's cool. Image 5. References. Yeah, I think I like it. I don't love it. I think the idea is cool. I think this page is fantastic. These 2 images side by side, beautiful, fantastic. CGIs in general they're fine. They're not really selling me the project so much. I think if I had a design like this, I probably wouldn't go down the photorealistic route. I might go down a little bit more of an abstract route in terms of trying to communicate the project. For example, it would be amazing if this model, which clearly exists, had sort of been composited into these images instead somehow. Or maybe that is what they've done and then they've photoshopped it a little bit. Because when I look at this image, there is quite a lot of weight and permanence to these structural elements within the lobby space here, the atrium. But then they're not really visible here, and I'd imagine that they would be. So for example, this translucency and transparency that you're kind of getting in these volumes, I don't really know how achievable that is. And it's completely not here in this model, which is fine. I think I have a lot of questions about this one, but I like the idea overall. So well done, cool. Going to move on to the next one, 84. Walking in the clouds. Wow. This guy is pretty big. This is very tall. Very interesting thing happening here with the screen and the facade and the colors. I'm just curious as to how this works. These trees might have a scale problem. I don't know how these trees work. They're very, very tall. They are as tall as the building. Interesting diagrams. Very interesting diagrams. Next image. Text is a bit small. Model photograph here looks unbelievable. Now, when I say that, that doesn't mean I love the project overall. I just think sometimes images are just kind of like, they're really impactful. They just kind of hit you straight away. They're very evocative. They're very effective. There's an impact. I just like this image. I love the color and tones in the facade here, even if I might not completely love the space. In fact, I don't think I do love the space. It's very speculative corporate office like. Diagram here is good. I think if you're going to have such a prominent or bold move in your project with the color of the facade, I would try not to compete with those tones and colors in my presentation material overall. For example, this works very well with this, and even the background graphic here, the color, works very well with this. And then these guys are a little bit of a mixed bag. And I understand that the idea is to color code the diagram, but there may have been better ways to do that, visually speaking. But that's just my opinion. Little interior here, doesn't look too bad. Image 3. Yeah, okay, so I think we've seen projects before in this series that are quite dynamic in a way, like the color of the building changes different times of the day, different times of the year. This looks a little bit like a kind of nightclub LED media center, like I'm thinking about BFI in London, or a lot of projects in London actually, where it looks a little bit noisy, like you could imagine a concert or something happening in here. This looks quite nice and delicate and well balanced, even if it's a little bit of a, not a, the image is a little bit dark, lacking a bit of detail. I just like the facade, you can read the circulation on it. These are really interesting. I actually just wish they weren't CGIs. I can't quite explain why that is. I find the CGI style in this presentation a little bit flat. Straight out of the model, really. Rendered and taken straight out, not a lot of artistry involved, which could make such a difference. For example, if I squint here, looking at this image, the values that really come through and pop the most is the foliage and the trees. When in reality, I feel like I wish the building popped a little bit more. And again, like these trees are placed here purposefully, but then you're blocking part of the building, and I think they're too tall. But those are nitpicks. Image 4, interior. Is this the interior? View of the lobby at the center of the lobby. These two images are awesome. This is really frustrating. So anyone who's been watching this series knows that I have a little bit of an issue when the outside of the building somewhat doesn't so much relate to the inside of the building, architecturally, visually, aesthetically, spatially. This feels a little bit like it's another situation where that is the case. For example, there's a real weight and thickness to this space. It looks to be like we've got concrete here, quite a delicate ceiling inset in this large kind of slab. And you've got like the reading of the banding, the horizontal banding in here is really interesting. And then obviously like the thickness of the circulation balustrade here is beautiful. And then this thin, tall space on the outside is fantastic. A little bit concerned really about how daylight would affect the curation of this artwork. But then when I go back here to image 3, it just doesn't, well maybe it does. And now if I go back to, see maybe it's that I skipped over this, but for example when I look at these 3 diagrams here, they're not as effective actually as this diagram, which quite clearly now makes sense in that there is an exterior skin which is quite light, and then there's this interior lining which is incredibly thick and dense. I almost wish they just sort of built this diagram, because what frustrates me a little bit is what have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 external facades, and then the inner chunk is built right up against these 2 facades. However, when we look at this image here, it's sort of set back again. So I think it would be good to see an actual plan diagram for this. Yeah, so I think if I could, I mean, it's easy to just kind of sit back and armchair design this one. I wish we had the big, heavy, thick, chunky volume in the center, and then we had a really beautiful, delicate external skin around it, in which people could flow around the interior space and could move in it, move through it, and move in it, and move around it. So in a way, you sort of already have that project here with these diagrams, which I think are fantastic. And then obviously they had to work within the constraints of the site. So they've tried to, you know, respond to the placement of this facade and line it up with that here. And I think that's a little bit of a shame, and it's probably the downfall of the project. There are multiple ideas here going on. So like I said, there's the facade tone, the color of the facade, the way it looks at night, this kind of nightclub thing going on here, all of this. When in reality, you sort of already have a really great project with just this. So yeah, if I had seen this previously, I'd be thinking, hey, just run with this. This and this is your project. The rest, not so much. So I think there's a great idea here, and then I think the way that it's developed, I think it's developed the wrong way, but I don't know. I can only see the 5 images that are available to me, so that's just what I'm going to say based on that. This, yes. This, meh, yes. Okay, on to the next one. 85, Boreal. Oh, this looks like a boat. This literally looks like a speedboat on top of a speedboat, and then both speedboats are like 10 times bigger than they should be, and they are sitting on top of one another, and they have just crash landed here. In a way, this guy is almost like this guy, but you know, 400 years later. So this idea of a boat mooring on the dock, but it's actually not a boat, it's a building that has sort of crash landed, is something that we've seen twice now in this batch of entries. So let's look to the next one. Yeah. Meh. Too much text. Don't like it. Yeah, I'm sorry, whoever the architects are. I just generally just don't like this one. No, gonna move forward. Sorry, I'm sure you worked really hard on it. It's not my taste, it's not for me. If any of you guys like it, comment below. We can talk about it in the comments. Need to move on. 86. Ooh, this is interesting. The first suggestion arising from the analysis of the site where the museum is located is the presence of the sea. Okay, too much text. I find it interesting that a lot of the designers will, or a lot of the architects will actually kind of put quite a strong, thick, heavy facade here. I understand from like a defensive point of view, for weather protection and environmental reasons, that makes sense, but why are there no windows here? Why are there no windows anywhere here, actually? We will find out. Sketches! This is a beautiful sketch. Alto vase, ding, 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 ding. I might need to get a graphic for that. This sketch is amazing. Beautiful sketch. Beautiful sketch. Again, just because I like the sketch though, doesn't mean I like the project. So is this a CGI? I don't think I agree with this at all. Because if this is like an LED presentation that will be sort of displayed on the building, yeah, it is. Like, there's no point in competing with nature. You just can't do it. I remember when I was in architecture school, a professor, I think I was proposing a building that was green and it was going to be in a forest. And he explained to me there's no point in competing with Mother Nature because Mother Nature's already done it. In other words, leave green to nature. Nature knows how to do it. I don't need to do it. And this project sort of reminds me of that. And by the way, that doesn't mean you can't do a green building. It's just sort of, I understood the point that he was making. So I never, ever, ever, ever used the color green ever, ever again. No, that's not what I'm saying. But you have this. So why do we also need that? That's kind of a beef with this one. Sketches are amazing. I wish they had just actually submitted the sketches because the CGI images don't do anything. This is not nice. This So extra, so expensive to build, so unnecessary. This, it's cool as a concept image, but I mean, even just the visuals, okay? Like, even if we just look at this down here, this is not even as nice to look at as the actual existing harbor, in my opinion. Image 4. Yikes. Nope. Don't like this at all. It feels like a the interior of like a Westfields or a shopping center, or just like a really meh department store, which is such a shame because I think this image is quite funny because there are two drawings here that might be two of my favorite drawings ever. Might be two of my favorite ever drawings in architecture. There is this wonderful Frank Lloyd Wright drawing for Falling Water, and then there is the experimental glass skyscraper by Mies van der Rohe. And they have basically put two of the most beautiful architectural drawings inside what is arguably one of the most frustrating to look at CGI images I've seen yet. Not even sure what's going on in here, but oh well. Image 5, again, more of the same. Nope, not for me. Moving on. Proposal 87. Ugh, another hill stairway up to a roof garden. Is this some stained glass action going on here? Let's see, image 2. Okay, diagrams, yeah, yeah. It's funny how many of the projects that do the same kind of move where it's like you're on the plaza, you go up this ramp or stair, you turn around and you reach a roof garden that looks over the site and the park behind. It's funny how many projects that have that one move also explain that move with lots of arrows, which is kind of like, don't really need the arrow, I can kind of read this. Yep, up and around. But then they're like, but just in case you missed it, boom, 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 arrows. This way, go that way. Maybe I'm being a bit mean there. This is quite a cool little massing diagram. I think this is a fine project. Maybe it blends a little bit too well in here. Like, for example, if I squint, I can't really read it. Interior. No, don't love it. Don't love it. See, everyone is a sucker for this building, which is fantastic. I think what's interesting though is that this only works. This project by Snøhetta in Oslo, I think, it only works because, from what I understand, the roof landscape public space is actually not architecture, but it is a public piece of art. And that was the only way in which the project was able to pass through planning. And that is like a one-off special case scenario. So that means it's not as simple as simply applying that then to other sites, other cities, other contexts, and hoping that it will work. But maybe it'll work. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe someone can touch on that in the comments below. Next one, 88, Unthought. That is a bold name for a project in this series. Oh shit, sorry. Oh, I went to image 1. Okay, this is 81, Unthought. This guy looks scary, I have to be honest. I'm a big fan of sci-fi. This looks like one of the mega structures that you would see in Blade Runner 2049 or Dune, which are cool projects, but I don't know how it works as a piece of architecture. And it's weird that it looks like they've got, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm reading this as a giant amphitheater, like a giant external stair, but there's no people on it. Image 2. This guy's a bit squat, a bit chunky, a bit wide at the bottom, wide at the base, then kind of funnels up a little bit. Image 3. Nah, I don't like this black line here. I don't like that. I'd prefer that if it was of the same material as the rest. Why do you have a boat block in your building here? Come on, what's that about? Image 4. It's a bit, it's not great. Image 5. No, I don't think I like this one very much. It looks a bit empty and cold and a bit intimidating. Doesn't feel very welcoming, although I can't quite clearly read the entrance in a way. Not sure. No, don't love it. It's a little bit science fiction, a little bit dystopian. Sorry, not a big fan of this one. Next one, 89. This one's a little bit sane. This one's it's a bit sharp. There's something about sharp buildings. Sharp projects like this look incredible in drawings. Like, I'm a big fan of the drawings. I'm a big fan of the plans and the drawings produced by Zaha Hadid Architects, but I'm not always such a fan of the built form. That's a conversation for a different video, but for example, I can look at this and I'd love to see a drawing of it. I bet the drawing's cool. The reality though, it looks quite scary. It's a little bit sharp and pointy, very tight angles. Yeah, diagram's not great. It's not so bad from here. Not so bad from here. That's quite a nice, friendly little interior. Again, if you don't know a lot of the details, play it down, go down the abstract route. Image 5. Nah, I don't think I love it overall. It reminds me a little bit of like one of the vehicles from Star Wars. You know, like those little scrapper vehicles that just kind of cruise around the desert. Maybe I'm being a bit mean. I know like I can see that some hard work went into this, but at the end of the day, I can only just call it as I see it. Don't like the giant external stair that turns into another external stair that leads nowhere. Nah, not a big fan of this one. Gonna move on to the next one. 90, Iram. And we got this plinth thing going on. Then we got this big swoopy thing coming out of it. And we got this little tall boy here. The overall shape and organization of the building were inspired by a movement reaching towards the sea. If anything, this thing's kind of turning its back on the sea. But let's see. Let's see. Diagrams look good, even though I think I would have just went ding, ding, ding. And I might have just stopped here personally instead of doing the swoop. But that's just my opinion. These aren't helping a lot. These are sort of useful, but I need to see them a bit bigger. Nice that they're showing how the circulation cores work. I think that's cool. Image 3. Again, like, I would have put some windows and stuff in here. It just looks so blocky and defensive. I really like this thing, this tall piece. It's good to see some architecture stuff, some models and furniture and stuff. Really cool. Image 5. Nice references. I don't know. Not a winner for me. Nah, it's fine. It's okay. After I review the first 100, I'm going to make a special video and I'm going to do a top 5 of that 100 so that everybody can sort of see how I'm assessing them and ranking them, and then I'll talk about those 5 in detail. And then I'm going to do that for 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and I'll work out the other 23 in there somewhere as well. Look, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the episode, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, share, comment, keep the conversation going. All the best. Talk soon. Thank you. Goodbye.